Imagine standing on the frigid deck of a ship, the air thick with frost that bites at your skin, while ice groans and cracks like a living creature beneath you. The sea is an endless expanse of white, but your heart races with the thrill of discovery, the dark promise of adventure whispering in your ears as you gaze toward an uncharted horizon. Tonight, we are looking at a story of ambition, desperation, and the unforgiving laws of nature. The USS Jeanette, a steam-powered vessel, ventured into the Arctic in 1879, its crew driven by the dream of reaching the North Pole. For many, the Arctic was not merely a destination, it was a siren call, an encapsulation of humanity's need to conquer the unconquerable, to chart the void and assert dominion over the wild. With every breath, you can almost taste the salt mixing with the metal tang of the ship. Yet, beneath this intoxicating thrill lies the looming shadow of dread. The men of the Jeanette were not only setting out to explore, they were flirting with disaster. The Arctic, with its blizzards that howled like banshees, was as beautiful as it was brutal. Each man on board was filled with dreams, yet they were also aware of the dangers lurking within the ice-laden waters. As they set sail from San Francisco, many whispered tales of previous expeditions that ended in madness or loss. These were the unsung stories, buried beneath layers of snow and time. As the Jeanette pushed through the ice, the thrill of exploration transformed into a desperate battle for survival. Supplies dwindled, hope began to erode, and the cold seeped into their bones. The whispers of camaraderie turned into frantic calls for rescue, a stark reminder that the Arctic gave nothing without demanding a terrible price in return. With the ship trapped in ice, time twisted and stretched. Days became weeks, weeks became months. The hallucinations of men lost in their own minds began to manifest. The thrill of the unknown turned grotesque as survival became a grim question of who would yield first to the merciless Arctic night. Through the frost and despair, they forged bonds that would be tested beyond imagination. Calls of unity echoed on the desolate ice. And yet, as the darkness deepened, so did the cracks in their fragile humanity. What sacrifices would they make to survive this frozen hell? Would loyalty endure, or would desperation drive men to betray their comrades? The crew of the Jeanette faced choices that no man should ever have to make. Hope faltered, and madness beckoned. In the end, it was not the cold that would claim them, but the very dreams that had drawn them into its icy embrace. This is the harrowing fate of the Jeanette Expedition, Chapter 1, The Call of the North. The year is 1879. A fever grips the Western world. A hunger for knowledge drives men deeper into the unknown. The Arctic whispers promises of glory, yet holds secrets colder than the ice itself. Among those drawn to this icy abyss is Captain George DeLong, a man with a restless spirit and unquenchable ambition. DeLong stands at the docks, surrounded by the shouts of sailors and the crash of waves against wooden hulls. The air is thick with salt and suspense, a prelude to the voyage that beckons. His chest tightens with excitement. This is not just a journey, it is a quest for immortality. The Jeanette, a ship crafted for exploration, waits at the water's edge. "Are we really doing this?" whispers one of the crew, his voice barely louder than the creaking of the rigging. "Doubt will see us swallowed by the ice," replies another, eyes glinting with determination. As the crew loads supplies, the sun hangs low, casting an orange hue across the sky. It feels like an omen, the kind of light that dances on the cusp of night. DeLong watches them, his heart swelling with pride. Each man carries dreams of finding the North Pole, rewriting the maps. But beneath their aspirations lurks fear, unvoiced yet palpable. The Arctic is not a friend to the foolhardy. It promises vast landscapes of white, glittering under the sun, yet hides peril beneath. Thinner than air, the joys of ambition start to feel like a weight pressing down. Days turn into nights, and the Jeanette sets sail. The chill of the northern waters seeps through the sailors' coats, a biting wind that seems to scrape at their very bones. The sea is deceptive, calm one moment, tempestuous the next. Captain DeLong stands at the helm, his hands calloused and strong on the wheel. He feels the rhythm of the waves, the pulse of the deep. Each creak of the ship echoes his resolve. "We will not falter," he murmurs to himself, though doubt swims in the back of his mind. "Captain," a voice calls out. It's his first mate, Charles, his breath fogging in the cold. "Ice ahead. We need to plot a new course." The word strikes like a hammer on glass. Ice, the very thing they seek to conquer. DeLong's pulse quickens. "Alter our heading. We'll navigate the lead." As they steer through the thinning passage, their senses sharpen. The scent of briny sea salt mixes with something foreign, an odor of mildew and rot. It drifts from the hold, a reminder of foodstuffs meant to last the cold months. How long before they spoil? The icebergs loom large against the grey sky, massive, jagged structures that rise like ancient giants, their presence an unyielding reminder of nature's power. They navigate through the gap, a delicate dance of wood and water. "What do you think is out there?" whispers one young sailor, his hope naive and bright. "Death," someone else mutters. "And glory," DeLong interjects, his voice firm, commanding. He needs them to believe in the promise of discovery. We're on the brink of greatness. Yet, even within his own chest beats a heart of uncertainty. Months of exploration await. Each day deepens their isolation. The prospect of hardship stretches before them like the endless horizon. The pangs of hunger, the piercing cold, and the despair that festers as the sun barely rises above the ice. Nightfall brings a silence that is unsettling. The stars pierce the sky like shards of glass, icy and distant. They huddle around meager fires on deck, and the glow throws shadows against their weary faces. "Do you think we'll find it?" someone asks, breaking the stillness. "Find what?" another replies, voice laced with skepticism. "The pole. The glory," he insists, though the fervor has begun to dim. DeLong listens, his gaze drawn to the shimmering lights above. The auroras thread languid fingers across the sky. Beautiful. Frightening. Gods weeping for the lost. "Men die for their dreams," he finally says, softly. "But the question is, what are we willing to give?" Silence blankets them. The crackling of the fire struggles to pierce the thick atmosphere. Days blur. The landscape shifts from ocean to ice, and the crew grows restless. Health fades. Each cough echoes with the threat of consumption. DeLong feels the weight of his decisions heavy on his shoulders. The journals they keep reveal the truth in ink, a record of aspirations quickly melting away under the unforgiving stare of the Arctic. "Food supply is dwindling, Captain," a voice reports. It's one of the younger sailors, eyes wide, lips cracked from frostbite. DeLong meets his gaze and sees fear. "How long until we run out?" "Maybe a month, 2 at the most." DeLong nods. His heart sinks. We forge ahead. Every sunrise reveals ice where none was before. The ship groans as it meets the oppressive weight. Isolation bites deeper, gnawing at the seams of their unity. One evening, as shadows grow long, a quiet conversation emerges beneath the dim lantern light. "Do you think the others back home know how precarious it is?" one man asks. "What do they care? They only want—" "Glory," replies another, his voice laced with bitterness. "Do you really think we'll survive this?" "I'd rather die out here than live a life of mediocrity," the first man snaps, desperation turning to anger. DeLong stands outside the circle, cold creeping into his bones. He runs a hand across his face, feeling the stubble, the exhaustion etched into every line. He knows they need hope, yet reality closes in, tighter and tighter, and then the night changes. An eerie silence falls. The wind falls still, too still. "What is that?" someone whispers, shivering not from the cold, but something darker. They all turn toward the horizon, where a shadow drifts into view. "Captain?" It is a warning, trembling with dread. DeLong squints against the void. The shape is enormous, a dark mass creeping closer. The very sky seems to darken around it. "Prepare the ship," he commands, his voice resonant but shaking inside. Underneath the dark sky filled with stars, the crew rushes to their stations, hearts pounding with an instinctive fear. "What could it be?" one crewman asks, but nobody answers. They sense the icy fingers of the unknown closing in. In that moment, DeLong feels the weight of his ambition. The call of the North can be a whisper, but it might also be a death knell. As ice cracks around them and the shadow looms ever closer, every man braces for a confrontation with an unyielding fate. Will they uncover discovery and glory, or will they awaken a monster from the depths of the ocean? The ice shifts beneath their feet, bringing them to the edge. The first step into darkness looms before them, and they stand silent, preparing for the worst. Before we descend further into the dark, make sure you are subscribed to the channel. You won't want to face the rest of this journey alone. And before we continue, drop a comment and tell me where in the world you are watching from tonight. Knowing you are out there, somewhere in the dark, makes this history feel all the more alive. Chapter 2. Setting sail. The summer sun blazes down on the bustling docks of San Francisco. July 8th, 1879. Banners flap in the salty breeze, announcing the USS Jeanette's departure. Excitement crackles in the air, a vibrant energy that thrums through the crowd. Sailors laugh, their voices mingling with the distant cries of seabirds. Captain George DeLong stands tall on the deck, his uniform crisp and polished. He scans the faces gathered below, each one radiating hope. "This is it, men, a journey to the North Pole." His voice booms, punctuated by the sound of a ship's bell ringing in affirmation. The crew rallies around him, some clutching their belongings in rusty patch bags. There's Solomon Brown, a navigator with a wild mane of hair, his fingers twitching as he tips his hat. "I've seen the Northern Lights, Captain. Just wait till you see 'em dance." His eyes sparkle with a childlike wonder. Nearby, the thick scent of tar and hemp ropes fills the air as supplies are loaded. The men grunt and heave, laughter rising above the noise. "Watch yourself, Thompson. That barrel will crush you," one yells, his voice a playful challenge amidst the chaos. But Thompson only grins, sending back a cheeky retort. Yet, below the laughter lies an undercurrent of tension. They're sailing into the unknown, a realm where few have dared to tread. Late-night whispers echo among the crew, tales of past expeditions that vanished without a trace. Tom, a young engineer, gulps nervously. What if we don't come back?" "Don't be daft," snaps Henry, the ship's first mate, slapping Tom's shoulder. "We're going to write our names in history. A fortune awaits us." The preparation is grueling, sweat-soaked shirts clinging to their backs as they hoist sails and tie knots. The heat of July bears down, humidity curling around them like a thick fog. Each crew member works with purpose, their spirits lifted, but shadows lurk in the corners of their minds. On the final day of preparation, the haggard dock workers wave a farewell, a sea of caps and hands. The Jeanette's hull, newly painted, gleams. Beneath that exterior, something else murmurs, a promise of cold, dark waters ahead. As the sun begins its descent, casting golden hues across the sky, DeLong gathers his crew. The sunset bathes them in a warm glow, but the captain's voice is firm. "Men, remember, we are not just sailors. We are explorers. We write our own destinies." The cheers ring out, but among the voices, doubts flicker like distant lightning. They sweep onto the ship as they set sail, the wind gusting across their faces, salty and invigorating. They leave the shores behind, but with each passing wave, the thrill of adventure mixes with trepidation. Later that night, as lanterns flicker on the deck, the men gather around a barrel of grog. Spirits are high, laughter threads. Through the air like smoke, to the great north, to glory, they toast, their cups raised. A camaraderie forms, a bond woven tighter with each sip of sweet burning liquor. But there's one man who sits apart from the revelry, Dr. Emil Schmidt, the expedition scientist. He stares out over the bow, the open water stretching endlessly toward the horizon. "We'll meet the ice soon enough," he mutters under his breath. The taste of bitterness lingers on his tongue, a man both curious and fearful of the fate that awaits them. As the ship rocks gently on the waves, the officers strategize. "We must chart our course carefully," Henry asserts, tracing a line across the map spread on the table. But even as their words fill the air with numbers and distances, there's an unspoken terror hovering over them. "And what if we run into trouble? Ice can crack a wooden ship like a walnut," whispers Tom, glancing over his shoulder. The laughter fades slightly, but the men attempt to project confidence. "Bah! We'll break through the ice with this mighty vessel. She's built for it." Henry's voice booms, yet there's a tremor that rolls beneath, unacknowledged. Night falls, cold creeping into the air as laughter dies down. The crew heads to their hammocks. In the quiet, the creaking of wood seems to whisper secrets of the dark waters ahead. DeLong lies awake in his quarters, staring at the ceiling in the dim light. His heart sinks. The weight of responsibility presses heavy on his chest. They are setting sail toward a destiny unknown. Not all journeys end with glory. Tomorrow they will face ice, shadows, the bite of cold. But tonight, they don't yet know the depth of their peril. As darkness blankets the ship, one thought gnaws at the pit of his stomach. What if fate has already decided? The dawn will bring the icy breath of the Arctic, a chill darker than they can imagine. What lies in wait beyond the horizon? Chapter 3. Icebound. The Arctic dawn breaks with a glaring light, reflecting off endless fields of white. The sun hangs low, casting long shadows of the Jeanette against the ice. It is July 1881, yet the air feels like a cryogen's embrace. 70 souls, bound to this ship, now feel the grip of fate tightening. "Don't worry, boys," George DeLong, the expedition leader, calls out, his voice strong but carrying a tremor. "We'll be free before the month is out." He wears a brave face, but beneath doubt lurks like a predator, ready to pounce. The ship creaks ominously. Every groan of the hull hints at the tremendous pressure surrounding it. Ice flows, heavy as stone, press and tangle against the Jeanette, transforming the vessel into a captive of winter. Each day slides into the next, blending hope with desperation. Fresh rations once filled their bellies. They shared hearty laughs, reminiscing about home. Now, the atmosphere is thick with apprehension. The pantry shrinks, the bread has grown stale, and the salty meat is even saltier, its savour fading. DeLong studies the horizon. "Look there," he gestures with a gloved hand. "You see that open water?" A sliver of optimism gleams in his eyes, a fleeting promise. The men nod, but their expressions reveal the truth. They too see the ice, vast and eternal, creeping closer with every passing hour. The temperature plunges as night falls. It bites at skin, turning exposed flesh to a painful blue. Breath comes out in foggy puffs, swirling like ghosts around their heads. "Damn it," one crew member mutters under his breath. "How can we be stuck here like this?" Inside the ship, the air grows stale. A rancid smell lingers, an oily scent from the outdated supplies. A constant hum of worry circulates among the men, the shared silence heavier than the thick ice surrounding them. "Are ye afraid, James?" asks an older sailor, his voice barely a whisper. James shakes his head, but his eyes betray him. "Nah, just tired. We'll be out soon, just—" He trails off, lost in thought. The truth hangs unspoken. Days drift into weeks. Each dawn blinds the men with the same glaring sun. Hope is a fragile thing, easily crushed by the icy weight of reality. The dwindling supplies gnaw at their spirits, just as the frost gnaws at the ship's hull. "Let's check the provisions," DeLong decides one cold morning. His voice is resolute yet tinged with urgency. The men shuffle to gather around him, following his lead, clinging to the last threads of hope. Inside the pantry, the men find the jars of pickled vegetables are now nearly all empty. "There's nothing left but the dried meat," one man notes, panic creeping into his voice. He shoves a hand through his hair, an exhausted gesture. "We can't eat leather." "Keep your heads," DeLong insists. "We will find food." but he can't shake the reality that lingers behind those words. His heart sinks as he stares at the shelves. What was once their lifeline now feels like a noose. As the days drag on, whispers of mutiny begin, thin as the ice beneath them. "We don't need him telling us what to do," a sailor mutters one night, his breath frosty in the dim light. "We should abandon the ship." "No, we can't abandon her," another fires back. "She's our only chance." The arguments boil into heated exchanges, fraying the threads of camaraderie. DeLong stands against the wall, silent. The tension in the room grips him, more chilling than the Arctic night. He can taste the fear in the air, sharp and metallic as he listens to their pleas. His men, once filled with laughter, now on the verge of despair. Outside, the wind howls like a tormented spirit. Ice creaks in a sinister symphony. Each noise sends a shiver down their spines, unmistakable in its meaning. Isolation seeps into their bones, amplifying every fear. In the evenings, as they huddle together for a warmth, they share stories of home. One man recounts tales of his children, their laughs ringing in his ears like distant bells. Another talks of the summer greens back on the farm, vibrant and alive. Yet, no matter how bright those memories shine, the shadows linger. Every crack of ice outside reminds them they are not just trapped by the elements but by their own fading hope. As supplies dwindle, desperation gnaws at their resolve. The ship's timbers become a prison, each plank pressing in closer. "When do we do something?" James finally breaks the silence, his voice cracking. "We can't wait until we're—" "Stop," DeLong snaps, the weight of command heavy on his shoulders. "We are not going to discuss this again. We wait." Weeks meld into a monotonous rhythm. The men rise numb, their hands rough and cold, their faces shadowed. Tension mounts like the ice surrounding them, thick and suffocating. They traverse icy decks, careful not to slip, but the danger is ever present. One misstep could send a man tumbling into the frigid waters, the void ready to swallow him whole. "You lose your footing, John," one sailor warns, gesturing at the slick surface. "You'll be done for." "Tell me something I don't know," John replies, forcing a laugh. But the humor is hollow, just echoing despair. Days blur into an endless cycle of fear and dwindling hope. The crew's morale barely holds, frayed at the edges as they grapple with their grim reality. Each sunset is a reminder that another day has passed, with no rescue in sight. Then, one morning, something stirs. DeLong awakens to a cacophony. Confused, he rushes from his cabin, only to find men huddled around an icy block, voices raised in excitement. "There's fish beneath the ice," one shouts, chest heaving with exhilaration. "We can break through." DeLong's heart leaps, a flicker of hope igniting. "Are you sure?" he asks, stepping closer. His mind races with possibilities, the thought of food, a life beyond these claustrophobic walls. "Look here," a crewman's voice rises over the others. "See? They're moving. Fish, just beneath the ice." With ice chisels in hand, they set to work. The sound of metal on ice fills the air. An electric anticipation buzzes among them, a raw primal instinct awakened. They strike boldly, hope rekindling as each blow sends shards flying. But as the ice breaks, a dark realization creeps in. The deeper they chip, the colder the wind begins to howl. The crackling thunders and echoes the hidden dangers around them. "Careful," DeLong warns, as irresponsible enthusiasm fills the air. "Stay back. We don't want it collapsing." But the crew, starved for victory, ignores him. They sense their chance. Some even recall optimistic dreams of home. "We can't let it go," someone whispers, driven mad by their despair. Suddenly, a crack splits the air, alarming and reverberating. Through their hearts, DeLong's eyes widen as he shouts, "Get back! Now!" Panic grips them, but it is too late. The ice beneath their feet groans, shifting in sluggish treachery. A fracture erupts like a growl, swallowing a man whole. The moment halts. The excitement morphs into horror. DeLong's voice carries above the chaos. "Retreat the ship. Get back inside. Too late. Too late." They scramble as fear freezes their limbs, hearts pounding in despair. As one man plunges through the ice, the crew watches in helpless horror, caught between hope and doom. And there, in the icy embrace of the Arctic, hope begins to melt away. Will they face the deep freeze together, or will the ice claim them all? The question lingers in the air, thick as the fog of uncertainty that surrounds them. The storm of their fates is brewing, icebound yet merciless. What awaits them in the darkness that creeps closer every day? Chapter 4. Isolation and Despair. The sun hangs low in the sky, a pale orb fighting to pierce the relentless grey. Days stretch into weeks, weeks bleed into months. The Jeanette Expedition, marooned in a frozen hellscape, has become a ghost of its former self, adrift between hope and despair. The biting wind cuts deeper than knives. It meanders through the icebound camps, chilling bones and spirits alike. Each morning, a crust of frost clings to their facial hair, catching the muted light like jagged glass. It's a cruel reminder of their isolation. Just yesterday, I thought I saw land, whispers Lieutenant Chip, eyes wide with a flicker of long-lost hope. His voice trembles, caught between excitement and madness. A mirage, perhaps, he adds, grip tightening around the journal he carries like a lifeline. The others nod, but their eyes betray their doubt. Isolation wraps around them like an impenetrable shroud. The laughter that once rang through the camp has turned hollow. The camaraderie forged in shared adventure now frays under the weight of despair. Scurvy creeps in silently. It starts with aching limbs, a deep-rooted fatigue that claw at them. Soon, swollen gums transform into crimson-seeping wounds. The sweet tang of blood festers inside their mouths, overshadowing the meager rations they've been reduced to. Tasteless biscuit, and the occasional slivers of cured meat that feel more like punishment than sustenance. One cold evening, as they huddle around a sputtering fire, Dr. Ambrose reaches for his mouth, teeth exposed as if offering a grim prize. "Look," he exclaims, eyes wild. The others lean closer, dread exchanging glances. He pulls down his lip, revealing tender, greyish flesh. "It's scurvy," he states flatly, the resigned acceptance dampening the fire's flickering light. Every day is a battle against despair. The wind howls louder, an ever-present spectre gnawing at their sanity. Shadows grow long and menacing, casting distorted shapes against the ice. In these moments of grief, a whispered conversation can feel like an echo in a tomb. "We're weeks away from rescue, if they can even find us," Corporal Keller murmurs, his words slicing through the silence. What if they don't come? The thought hangs thick in the air, suffocating every flicker of hope. They occupy a fragile world. Men who once bantered over maps of uncharted territories now creep into silence for days at a time. It's not just the cold that keeps them apart. It's the awakening realization that they may never return. One morning, the air is heavy with the rancid stench of decomposition. Too many days spent without fresh provisions have turned supplies into a curdled memory. "We must make harder choices," Commander DeLong announces, voice shaking as he surveys the gaunt faces of his men. "Rations for those who might still stand a chance." The words linger, reverberating in their minds. They understand, yet the unspoken bond makes it impossible to accept. And so, the invisible line drawn between comrades grows sharper, each man hyper-aware that survival may require breaking ties they once swore to uphold. Isolation's cold grip begins to twist their minds. Shadows whisper accusations. Hallucinations dance just beyond their vision. Peter, once the boldest of the crew, now leans against a snowbank, hands shaking, muttering about a phantom ship, sails gleaming under an ethereal light. "It's out there," he insists, voice rising. "I swear it. Where are the others?" But there are no others, only the distant rumor of ice shifting and cracking, a reminder of the instability surrounding them. The crew pins their hopes on that elusive rescue, but each day erodes the belief that anyone will come. Food becomes a dark obsession. The rationed biscuits that once felt like comfort now serve as reminders of their impending demise. One morning, Abel insists he saw a seagull. "Dinner!" he shouts, eyes bright with madness. He runs into the distance, leaving footprints in the pristine snow, but the only thing that follows him is silence. When he does not return, dread tightens its grip. They split into search parties, voices echoing through the stark wilderness. "Abel!" they call, but the wind swallows their cries whole. All that remains are the whispered fears of what their isolation has done to them. Lying awake at night, the stars blink cold and indifferent. Men share their despair, voices brittle. I can hear them sometimes, voices, telling me to go home. Chip's admission hangs bitterly in the air. There is no journey home for them, only the deafening scream of the icy void. Even the fire's warmth feels like betrayal, a fleeting comfort that flickers and fades like their hopes. Every ember is haunted by faces of distant loved ones, now nothing more than memories pressed against frostbitten fingers. What will we tell them? One man whispers in the dark. Tell them we lingered too long. It's a morose joke puncturing an already heavy atmosphere, yet the laughter that follows is tinged with madness. They laugh, but it is a hollow cacophony echoing down corridors of despair. As if to mock their fate, the ice creaks, groaning under their cumulative weight. And then, the worst of their despair manifests one morning, when they find the first body. Keller crumples beside his bunk, the light gone from his once lively eyes, face frozen in an ashen grimace. "More rations for the others," DeLong grimly remarks, his voice a mask of stone that shatters immediately afterward, revealing just a flicker of his humanity. They have crossed a threshold from which there is no return. The frost feels alive as it creeps into their hearts, turning blood to ice. A layer of frost seeps into the crevices of their minds, fogging reason and solidarity. "They said we were made of stronger stuff," whispers Dr. Ambrose, voice trembling against the frigid air. "What hope is there now?" And just when they think they cannot sink any lower, a storm descends, howling across the ice. Waves of despair crash over them, burying every flicker of resilience they had left. Snow blinds them, swirling like lost souls across a moonlit sea. "I can't take it any longer," shouts Kelly, eyes glistening with tears formed from more than just cold. "We're trapped here." The others stand frozen, masks of denial slipping, the raw edge of fear creeping into their hearts. A faint barking echoes through the blizzard. In the chaos, it almost sounds real, but it's dangerously distorted, like a memory from happier times. The thought of rescue flickering at the edges of their minds, like a mirage in the distance. And yet, deep inside, they fathom that hope is slipping further away. The storm continues to rage, and with it, the fragile thread of their sanity tightens. What will be left when the last spark of hope is extinguished? The storm rages, a mirror to their turmoil. Stuck in the embrace of ice and madness, they fight against the suffocating grip of despair. And in the heart of that storm, a dark revelation dawns. They realize isolation has stripped them of more than just their hope. It has stripped them of each other. What does survival mean when humanity is lost in the icy abyss? As the howling winds drown out their last shreds of sanity, a single truth lingers in the dark. The shadows of despair linger too. The question remains, at what cost will they fight to survive? A solitary moment hangs heavy in the air, suffocating. And just then, a distant growl slithers through the wind. Is it real, or a figment of their twisted minds? Despair takes a new shape, clawing at them from the inside out, and the storm continues to rage as something in the white beyond stirs. Chapter 5. The Shadows of Madness. The frost creeps in like a whisper, consuming the air. Each breath signals despair, the icy tendrils biting at exposed skin. Ice forms over the sails, stealing their lifeblood. There is a relentless crunch beneath the men's boots. Snow, but it's more than that. It feels like hope underfoot, frozen and buried. In the cramped quarters of the Jeanette, the atmosphere thickens. Shadows loom larger than life, twisting faces into grotesque masks. The flickering light from dwindling oil lamps barely reveals the growing dread etched on their features. What once united them now sets them apart. "Why is it so cold?" one man mutters, his voice hoarse and strained. A quiet derision replaces the once friendly camaraderie. "I can't feel my fingers anymore." His hands clutch his knees, shivering, not just from the chill. He feels the creeping weight of despair. "Just keep moving," another snaps. It's a command, but there's no authority behind it, just weariness. The echoes of footsteps creep into silence as they huddle together, whispering secrets that no longer seem conspiratorial, but desperate. A rift is forming. As the days melt into one long nightmare, rations dwindle. The men huddle around meager fires, staring blankly into flames that cast unholy shapes on their skin. The smell of burnt seal meat fills the air, a putrid scent that once meant sustenance now turns their stomachs. "Matthews, take the first watch tonight." The words come from Dr. Melville, his brow furrowed deeply. "We can't afford any more mistakes." But Matthews only nods, eyes sunken. Inside him, a beast stirs, hunger and paranoia feeding one another. With each watch, each hour of darkness, uncertainty overwhelms. They hear whispers in the night, scratching sounds that gnaw at the edges of sanity. Each man becomes a shadow of himself, haunted. The walls seem to close in, suffocating. Ithaca, a robust sailor, claims to have seen a figure watching from the ice, a dark shape that blinks out as he squints to see more clearly. "You're seeing things," Thomas says dismissively, but his voice shakes. The tension is palpable, thick as the storm clouds gathering on the horizon, but doubt brews. Each day, another man seems lost to the depths of his own mind. They spot Abner, hunched over a chart, scratching nonsensical lines all over. The parchment is a jumble of fears, four-legged beasts, distorted faces, and plans of escape. "We must go east," he shouts suddenly, eyes wild with desperation. "That's where we will find land." But he is overruled, mocked, as the others cling to the safety of familiar surroundings. Conflicts arise. Men lash out at one another for mundane grievances. The air crackles with tension, splintered by fits of rage and despair. "You ate my share," someone screams, jumping to his feet, grasping the hilt of his knife. The knife shines under the dim light, an emblem of their unraveling sanity. "Sit down, you fool," Matthews roar. But the challenge is met with silence, thick and unyielding. Eyes dart between the faces of men who once shared laughter, who now barely share glances. In the night air, the wind howls like a banshee. Sensing the darkness creeping inside them, it becomes unbearable, a mirror to their spiraling madness. Rumors pass like a swift contagion, clawing their way through flesh and bone. Some believe one of them is cursed, haunted. Others speak of darkness beyond understanding, seeping into their minds like ice water. One evening, the men gather around what little heat they've managed to build. Laughter dies rapidly, suffocated by the weight of despair. "What was it like, the world outside?" one man muses, staring into the flames. "Do we even remember, or did we leave our memories back at the docks?" Thomas chimes in, an odd flicker of excitement lighting his eyes. "There were voices, people calling for us. Surely they're out there searching." A few nod, but sense of collective resignation hangs heavily in the air. The path is lined with ghostly silhouettes, memories of friendships cracking under pressure. Each day starts with dwindling hopes. They fixate on the horizon, imagining land that remains forever out of reach. Meanwhile, paranoia grows, feeding on their vulnerability. Dread fills the void left by vanished dreams. They suspect each other now, covert glances lingering too long, words painted in suspicion. Then there's the scream. It pierces through a quiet evening, rising higher and higher until it fractures the soupy night. The crew bursts from their quarters, hearts racing. "It's the wind," Matthews insists, but the shadows remain still, watching. "I saw him," cries Ithaca. "He went that way." He points toward the dense blackness encasing them, welcoming a new wave of terror. Tension skyrockets as they realize one of their own is missing, slipped away, lost to the frozen abyss outside. Hours of searching yield nothing. Frostbite clings to their skin as panic grips their hearts. They huddle closer, fingers trembling. Silence blankets the ship, heavier than the snow piling on the deck. Night falls again, but it brings no peace. Matthew sits with his head in his hands, a low tremor racking his body. "What's happening?" he murmurs almost to himself, the weight of despair taking form in his chest. Madness flickers in their eyes, glistening faintly like the starlit sky. Just when it seems they could crawl back into sanity, something stirs, a movement between shadows. No one dares speak of it. Seeing is believing, yet belief can't comfort any more. As night draws on, they hear another scream. Except this time, it doesn't belong to a man. No, it's something else entirely. Something darker, echoing forth with every shiver of the wind. "Everyone outside," Matthews orders abruptly, urgency in his voice. They scramble, breath expelling into freezing air, but standing before them is a ghostly figure, a silhouette distorted by desperation, the taste of madness thick on their tongues. Who will be the next to succumb? Can anyone be trusted now? The edge of reason slips further into darkness, and they feel it, despair winding around them like chains. As the figure steps closer, someone whispers, "What did we become?" The answer hovers in the air, chilling them to the bone. Tomorrow promises more madness, and at the break of dawn, they will have to face their own reflections in the depths of the ice, if their minds hold together that long. The shadows stretch long, beckoning them towards an unfathomable fate. What lies ahead may be the end of their unity or the birth of treachery. The bonds of man are shredded, turning hearts into battlegrounds. Only time will tell if they will hold on, or what nightmares await in the frozen grip of the unknown. Chapter 6. The Fateful Decision. Ice crunches underfoot. The Jeanette groans as her wooden hull becomes a tomb. 19 men stand on the deck, encased in a world of desolation. The air, thick with despair, tingles in the lungs, sharp as broken glass. Here, the temperature has plummeted, a merciless -40 degrees. Frost forms a deadly lace along their lashes, and men peer out, faces etched with the weight of desperation. Captain George DeLong stands at the helm, his eyes scanning the horizon, a relentless stretch of ice and shadow. He knows the ship will not last. The crew murmurs behind him, a restless tide of concern. "The ice isn't giving, Captain," mutters Lieutenant Chip. His voice is barely a whisper, but carries the weight of all their fears. "Nothing remains for us here," DeLong replies, his voice steady but thin, like the brittle air. He can feel their gaze digging into him, a mix of hope and dread. The walls of the Jeanette have become a claustrophobic prison, freezing them, isolating them from the life that lay just beyond the ship's walls. Rations are running low, their supplies dwindling like the fleeting warmth of sunlight, gone too soon. A heavy silence lingers in the air, broken only by the crackle of ice shifting beneath the ship. Every creak sends a shudder through the men. They know the beginning of their end has arrived. "Captain?" It's Collins, his voice shaky, the bravado slipping away. "What are we waiting for?" DeLong turns, meeting Collins's gaze. Fear hangs between them like fog. Collins is a wiry man with a voice that has held its ground through countless storms, but now it quavers. DeLong inhales deeply, tasting the metal of uncertainty. "We need to go." The words slip out, heavy with consequence. A collective shiver ripples through the crew. They exchange glances, tight-lipped and uncertain. Across that ice, another voice breaks in. This one belongs to Henry, the ship's cook. His hands tremble, clutching a frayed cap. "It's madness, Captain. Madness." But the madness has already begun. DeLong feels the weight of their stares. He studies their faces, young and old, men he knows well. They are brothers in this bleak wilderness. He knows their strengths, their fears. Their voices intertwine in his mind, calling him to account. The ice won't be safe for much longer, DeLong insists, the urgency rising inside him. We trek now. We have a chance. The crew's murmurs grow louder, but the sound of ice cracking beneath them, a warning from the frozen abyss, silences their fears. DeLong faces the expanse outside. The stark frozen desert stretches endlessly. He walks toward the railing, staring into the void, the life they've built, the dreams they harbored, all of it fading into the distance. The memories press into him like the biting cold. "Then let's leave this cursed ship," shouts Chip, cutting through the dark air. The words ignite a flicker of determination. "We can't stay," DeLong replies, looking each man in the eye. "If we stay, we die." In the dim light of their torch, shadows dance across their faces, drawn tight with resolve. One by one, they nod. Decisions carved from desperation hang in the air. There's a collective breath, a moment of unity, as they prepare, grabbing whatever remnants are left. Canteens, food, sleds. An overwhelming stench envelops them. Something burns in the hold, the remnants of the cook's last meal, forgotten amidst the despair. "Henry," DeLong calls out, "tend to that. We don't leave anything behind that can ignite." "Right, Captain." Henry races off, fear driving him forward, the smell mixed with the biting ice chills deeper than the cold. The crew moves as one, a reluctant exodus from their vessel. Every footstep on the frozen deck is a step into the unknown. The air is suffocating, and many feel their resolve wither like wilting flowers. DeLong watches Collins pull his leather jacket tighter around him, a small act of defiance against the bitter cold that seeks to claim them. "Let us make haste, men. We can't delay," DeLong urges. The time has come to escape the clutches of the Jeanette. The ground outside is a mosaic of glimmering white and treacherous crevices, the light reflecting off the ice like a million stars fallen to earth. Their breath plumes in the air, a ghostly reminder of their presence as they step boldly into the abyss. As they begin their journey, a chilling wind whispers through the ragged hoods of their coats. Ice crunches beneath heavy boots as they tread a path laid bare through the unforgiving wilderness. "Captain," Chip notices something, a jagged crack in the ice nearby, a reminder of how fragile this escape is. "We need to watch the terrain. These fissures can swallow us whole." "Stay close," DeLong commands, pushing the new fear aside. The dark void of what lurks below mirrors their growing fears. What happens when the ice gives way, when hope shatters beneath them? The first steps slip easily into a rhythm. The men focus, putting one foot in front of the other. Threads of hope weave silently among them. Each man, clinging to the notion of survival, keeps his gaze up, unyielding despite the encroaching shadows. As the sun begins its descent, casting hues of orange and mauve over the bleak landscape, they pull their scarves tighter against the bitter wind. The temperature continues to drop. Their faces sting with frostbite, but determination pushes them onwards. Do you think we'll see land again?" Collins asks, his voice cracking. Uncertainty hangs heavy in the atmosphere, like a shroud. "Land is out there," DeLong replies, but he knows the words are hollow. "We just have to believe it's waiting for us." As night falls, a blanket of darkness envelops them. The quiet grips tighter, punctuated only by the sound of wind howling like a wild animal. The tension thickens, each man wrestling with their demons in silence. The cold seeps deeper, and the reality of their situation grows undeniably sharp. The fires of hope begin to flicker, shadows stretching like fingers eager for comfort. Fatigue tugs at their limbs, but retirement is not an option. They press onward, fueled by sheer will. DeLong surveys his men, the flickering torchlight reflecting the weary lines etched into their faces. Each man carries an invisible weight, the burden of survival heavy on their shoulders. Even the coldness of night doesn't hold back the fire of their resolve. Then it comes, a shrill scream from deep within the ice. A sudden, piercing echo shatters the fragile silence. Men freeze, hearts racing. What was that? Chip whispers, turning. DeLong stands rooted, caught in a moment that stretches into eternity. I don't know, he admits, voice steely but betraying a tremor. But we move. The question hangs in the air like a blade. What unseen horrors await them in this frozen wilderness? The uncertainty thrums in their chests as they steel themselves. With glances of trepidation, they move forward, drawn into the bleak night, and the journey across ice begins, an expedition born of desperation, yet still twinkling with the frail hope of survival. Behind them, the Jeanette remains, a ghost ship adrift in a world of shadows, entombing its own tale of despair. In the vast emptiness of the Arctic, somewhere, something watches back. What waits in the dark as they forge ahead? Can hope outlast the frigid grip of despair? Chapter 7. The Harsh Realities of the Ice. The Arctic expanse stretches endlessly, a desolate canvas of white and grey, where the horizon bleeds into a sky the colour of lead. The men of the Jeanette Expedition march, their boots crunching against the hard, icy crust, each step met with resistance and the gnawing chill of fate. The temperature has plummeted to -40. Their breath hangs in the air, visible and fleeting, just like their hope. Captain George DeLong strides forward, his face lined with resolve, yet betraying weariness. The wind howls, a brutal symphony that claws at their exposed skin, a constant reminder of nature's indifference. "Keep moving," he barks, his voice barely piercing the cacophony. Around him, the men exchange glances, the weight of uncertainty settling like a heavy fog. They press on, faces drawn tight, mouths cracked and bleeding from the relentless cold. It's a terrible juxtaposition, each man driven by the need to survive, while carrying the fear of what lies ahead, of what they may soon have to do just to breathe another day. As the days blur together, food becomes a ghost, haunting their thoughts. Each rumbling stomach feels like an echo of their intentions, fading into the frozen wasteland. The rations diminish steadily, and the last remnants of their canned provisions begin to dwindle. "What's left?" asks one crewman, William Dunbar, his voice a raspy whisper that betrays the desperation gnawing at his insides. DeLong exhales, icy fog coating his worn beard. "Enough for days if we're careful, but careful won't mean much if the ice swallows us whole," Dunbar mutters, glancing at the vast frozen sea surrounding them, indifferent to their plight. The sound of cracking ice cuts through the air, a deep rumble that sends shivers down their spines. A sense of malice hangs in the atmosphere. Nature is not just a backdrop, it is a sentient force, and it seems to be judging them. Night falls, the darkness wrapping around them like a suffocating shroud. They huddle together, the faint glow of a meager fire flickering against the shadows. The smell of burning whale oil is thick in the air. It feels like an offering to the gods that look down upon them. "Whose turn is it to watch?" asked an exhausted crewman, the strain visible beneath his frostbitten eyebrows. "I'll take it," replies another, teeth chattering audibly as he rises. How noble, to think he could keep the rest safe from the wrath of the ice, if only for a little longer. The night stretches painfully, every hour a reminder of the gnawing hunger, the frigid air clawing at their cheeks. As they take turns, voices are hushed, sharing dark jokes about someone's unlucky fate, or maybe the ghost of one who went missing weeks before after chasing a seal. Laughter rises, brittle and uncomfortable, the kind that barely masks the panic creeping in. They sit, hands wrapped tightly around tin, mugs, the firelight flickering off their gaunt faces. "If we're going to make it, we have to be smarter," says Dunbar, his eyes sharp despite fatigue. "We ration, we forage, anything." "But forage here," one chimes in. "We're surrounded by ice. What do you propose we do? Eat snow?" The atmosphere becomes charged, tension crackling like the dry wood they've fed into the flames. "I say we set out for that ridge tomorrow, see what's beyond. There might be seals. Maybe—" Captain DeLong's words dangle in the air, tentative. Everyone knows the reality. Desperation clouds judgment, and hope can sometimes lead you astray. The following morning, they awaken to a hard frost. the world gripped in an unyielding embrace of winter. The sun fails to chase away the cold. It merely offers a promise of a relentless routine, a cycle of survival punctuated by dread. They press onward, the terrain shifting beneath their feet, treacherous and uneven. Ice. Formations rise like sinister monuments, mocking their struggle. Waves of sharp winds howl through the ravines, relentless and biting. Every gust feels like a physical blow, sapping their strength with every step. "Stay close," DeLong orders, but his voice sounds less like a command and more like a plea. Ahead, a pocket of water glimmers, a tantalizing illusion. The men pause, eyes widening, its temptation wrapped in danger. "Get too close, and the ice could crack," someone warns, a tremor in his voice. "I see seals," Dunbar points, excitement igniting for a moment. Instincts battle with despair. Cold reality swiftly seizes the thrill. They gather their last reserves of strength, waiting like predators. The thin veneer of hope flickers, bright and fragile against the frost-bitten backdrop of nature's brutality. But nature remains unyielding. A low groan echoes from beneath them. The ice shifts ominously, a warning growl that sends a chill deeper than the cold. "Back, now!" DeLong shouts. They scramble, adrenaline surging, but the soil beneath them is treacherous, a deceptive landscape that seems intent on swallowing them whole. One man falls, crashing through the ice, a splash that shatters the frigid air, followed by, "Help! I can't swim!" Shouts erupt, chaos unfolding. Their world trembles, and for a moment, time freezes. A snapshot of horror. "No!" Dunbar lunges forward, rope in hand, but the ice betrays him. The uncertainty hangs like a noose. Will they grab him, or will they end up like him? Frantic hands reach out, pulling, but the ice is a treacherous enemy. They can hear the cracking beneath them, like the sound of a death knell. They manage to hook the rope around him. "Pull!" someone cries, but their strength wanes as panic grips them. The icy grip of defeat threatens to drag everyone down. With one final heave, they pull the man from the abyss, panting, gasping, shivering in shock. But what, now? The limits of resilience loom larger than before. Something slips, the weight of despair draping over them like the bitter cold night. With dwindling rations, the temperature refusing to relent, and now the very ice testing their resolve, hope is becoming a rare commodity. "Tomorrow," DeLong murmurs, more to himself than them. Tomorrow is a fragile thread, woven through uncertainty. What awaited this band of men in the frozen wilderness? But one thing is clear. The harsh realities of the ice are unforgiving, and tomorrow may not bring the answers they so desperately seek. Will they find sustenance or succumb to desperation? The horizon holds secrets yet to unveil. Chapter 8. The Rise of Treachery. The taut silence of the icebound landscape is punctuated by muffled whispers, choked voices huddled around a dim flame. The temperature drops again, biting deeper into their bones. A bitter wind howls outside, relentless and unforgiving. Inside the tent, the air is thick with the stench of sweat and fear. They gather together, men once filled with camaraderie, now shadows of their former selves. Hunger gnaws at their bellies. Each man wraps himself tighter in his tattered blanket, as if it could shield him from the grim reality encroaching outside. "You're taking all the rations, Parker," one man accuses. "We're starving." The accusation hangs like a noose in the air. Parker, gaunt and exhausted, swallows hard. "Listen," he replies, his voice hoarse. "We all agreed. We ration them, for everyone's sake." But the trust has started to crack. Each man knows the taste of desperation, bitter and sharp on the tongue. Suspicion festers, turning brotherhood into hostility. "Agreed? When did your word become law?" Another sneers, his face taut with anger. The fire flickers, casting long shadows that dance like ghosts. They're haunted, not just by the icy grip of the Arctic, but by their own spiraling fears. The vast emptiness outside mirrors the growing void between them. Days blur together as morale plummets. Tasks that once seemed simple now feel monumental. Gathering firewood becomes a whisper of a memory. The ice is unforgiving, each crack beneath their feet echoing the fractures in their unity. On a fateful night, a fight breaks out. It starts with a shared plate of pemmican, the last crumb of hope. You're hoarding it. A fist flies, connecting with the side of a face. The sound reverberates into the icy darkness, punctuated by a groan. Blood mixes with snow, staining it crimson, a stark contrast to the pure white that surrounds them. The sight sends shudders through the group. They're not just fighting for food anymore. They are fighting for survival, for dignity. "Enough!" shouts Commander Francis Crozier, his voice barely more than a gurgle. His once strong frame now trembles, tired from too many sleepless nights filled with worry. "We are all we have," he pleads. "Break this. Madness." But with each word the rift widens. Treachery blooms in every unguarded moment. Men begin to whisper about abandoning the group. The cruel landscape outside reflects the turmoil within. The ice becomes a stifling prison, and hope thrums a distant heartbeat, edging ever closer to silence. It is Henry's turn to watch the night. He stands sentinel, blinking against the stinging cold. Each breath fogs in front of him, a small veil he wishes would shield him from the knowledge gnawing at his heart. He hears voices, more arguments layered beneath the howling wind, unwanted secrets curling around him. "Tonight," one voice whispers conspiratorially, "we take what we must." Henry's blood runs cold. He leans closer, straining to hear. The flickering glow of the dying fire barely lights the men's huddled forms. They plot beneath the shroud of night. Shadows twist and bend, mirroring the choices becoming all too real. Days turn into restless nights. The rations diminish. Fingers scrape the bottom of empty tins, a pitiful sound that echoes despair. The men grow desperate, eyes wild with hunger and mistrust. "You're keeping secrets, Leech," a man accuses, thrusting a finger at him. "What do you know?" Leech's face pales. He can feel the tension constricting the air around him. "I swear, I'm not holding anything back. We're all in this together." But the words ring hollow, a plea wrapped in desperation. The group watches, eyes narrowed with suspicion, calculating how to bend the situation to their will. Snowflakes begin to fall, each one a tiny dagger. It becomes an unrelenting storm, each gust of wind like a warning. Yet they remain huddled together, a trembling mess of men, entwined by shared mortality but driven apart by desperation. Food runs out, supplies dwindle. They turn to sickly ingenuity. A turtle once kept under the seal's skin is sacrificed. Its flesh becomes another meal, and the rancid fat is saved for warmth. The decision sits heavy on their souls. Was it worth it? Each man wonders whether they would do it again if the situation demanded. The lines are drawn, and alliances shift like ice plates on the frozen sea. As tensions escalate, loyalties fall apart. One night, as shadowy figures lurk just beyond the tents, whispers turn into clattering anxieties. "I saw him. He was trying to take our share." Another man's voice cuts through the dark, fueled by betrayal. "Then he must pay," comes a voice, much colder than the ice surrounding them. "We can't afford to let anyone betray us." Frustration culminates in the air, a palpable tension, sharp enough to cut. The looming threat of betrayal hangs thick, as expectations twist and bind tighter. Fingers tense around weapons once intended for protection. Now they become instruments of fear, ready to strike at the first sign of treachery. Then an unexpected scream slices through the night, echoing off the ice. It reverberates in their chests like a drumbeat of dread. They rush outside, breath fogging as they run, hearts hammering. A man sprawls in the snow, hands grasping at fleeting warmth. Shocking red blooms around him, stark against the white. "Who did this?" someone gasps, horrified. Eyes dart, filled with accusations that paint the air with distrust. Henry rushes forward, kneeling beside the fallen. It is Parker, the man they griped about not sharing rations. Panic unfurls like a wound in his chest. "I tried to give..." Parker's voice trails off, followed by a strangled gasp. Blood spills from his lips as he struggles to stay conscious. "Who would do this?" someone whispers, backing away as the horror sets in. The body shudders. "No more, please!" Parker gasps before his eyes glass over. Suddenly, the firelight flickers ominously behind them. It casts deceptive shadows that flicker and twist. Who among them could become a killer? The realization crashes like waves against the frail unity they had left. The smell of burning flesh begins to waft in from the not-too-distant cook fire. Something primal rises in each of them, wrestling with the necessity of survival against the weight of morality. "Survival brings out the worst," Crozier whispers, horror rising. As the roots of treachery wind deeper, they understand that to survive, they might have to engage in acts that twist their very humanity. Will Brotherhood withstand the next cruel choice? What becomes of a man when the fight for survival morphs into a battle for betrayal? Chapter 9. Echoes of Despair. The winds howl like lost souls, scraping against the icebound carcass of the Jeanette. It's a relentless, bitter sound, one that gnaws at the remaining crew. The cold has seeped into their bones, a primal freeze that dulls thought and steals warmth. Each ragged breath forms clouds of mist, hanging heavy in the air like the despair weighing on their hearts. "Is anybody out there?" One voice strains, but it is only the ice that answers him, mocking and silent. They huddle together in a crude shelter fashioned from driftwood and canvas, their faces gaunt, eyes sunken. Light filters through the grey of their world, creating a washed-out illusion of warmth that seems to tease them. Water drips slowly, the sound unnervingly loud against the quiet desolation outside. It feels like the very essence of hope trickling away. "I can't feel my fingers," Peter whispers, as he rubs his hands together, worn and cracked. The wind lashes against the canvas, a reminder of the chaos outside. His companion, Ray, nods, teeth chattering, eyes darting to the door. "Just hold on a little longer. We'll find more food," Ray lies. The truth lingers in the unspoken air. Hope has become thin, like the ice on the surface of a dangerously deep crevasse. They've scoured the land, finding little more than starvation in the wreckage. Hours feel like days, binding them in a cycle of fear and desperation. The radio, once a beacon of contact with the outside world, now sits silent, a relic of their lost civilization. "Has anybody heard anything?" Another voice cuts through the gloom. There is a collective shake of heads, dread pooling like ice in their stomachs. Then a sound breaks through the cacophony of the wind, the distant cracking of ice. What was that? A whisper of panic. They freeze, eyes wide. It's nothing. Probably just the ice settling. Ray tries to sound calm, but even he can't mask the tremor in his voice. Each of them knows the truth. Nothing is just nothing here. Nature is an unpredictable beast, and they are at its mercy. As the shadows grow long, their stomachs growl louder, a cruel reminder of their unyielding hunger. They barter stories in the dim light, tales of home, of lush fields and warm summers. "I remember the smell of lilacs," Peter says, voice soft. "They bloomed every spring, just before the harvest." Ray's eyes flicker at this, a sadness enveloping him. "Remember when we had that feast?" Ray chimes in, his smile faltering. "You made the stew with that wild game you caught. Best meal I ever had." Each memory is both a reprieve and a weight, drawing them deeper into nostalgia. But reality crashes in like the jagged ice they see outside. Their rations dwindle despite their best efforts to conserve. The last tin of meat has been opened, the contents long gone, tissues of hope now soaked up by the bitter cold. "We need something more soon," Peter mutters, shoulders slumped. There's a heaviness in the air, a realization that drives fear into their hearts. Outside, the landscape is an endless stretch of white, merciless and mocking. The ground crunches beneath their boots, a sound that echoes the weight of their decisions. Each step feels like a betrayal of the warm shelter they once called home, now just a fever dream. "Let's scout further tomorrow," Ray proposes, though the spark of fervor is fading. He looks over at the others, measuring their resolve. Each face tells a story of exhaustion and weariness. The faint sound of cracking ice lingers in the back of their minds. That night the temperature plummets further. They gather close, desperate to share both warmth and lingering whispers, but it's too late. Surrounding them is the vast, vacant cold. It screams of their mortality, echoing their fears back to them. Dawn breaks, grey and lifeless. The men step outside, each breath a puff of vapour in the air. The earth groans beneath them. Today's the day, Ray states, trying to inspire courage. But they all know this is a lie they are telling each other. They venture further than before, the horizon a cruel joke of promise. Across the ice, they see cracks, gaping wounds in the earth's surface. Be careful, Peter warns as they tread carefully. The ground beneath is hollow. It could give way at a moment's notice. Ah! A sudden lurch, and Ray goes down, boots slipping into a deep fissure. Help! Panic surges through them like electricity. It's too late. He scrambles, clawing at the ice, fingers clenched in terror. One of the others lunges forward, and they grasp him in a desperate attempt to pull him back, but the ice shifts dangerously. Hold on. Their cries meld into a chorus of fear. Echoes of despair swirl, ringing hollow in the icy expanse. They can feel the fissure widening beneath their feet. I can't, Ray screams, his voice raw and panicked. The ground shakes and shifts. There's no grip. With a final chilling silence, Ray disappears into the ice. The world goes still. They wrestle with the horror of what just happened, a suffocating dread wrapping around their throats. We have to go, one man gasps, eyes wide with fright. A consensus forms without words, terror binding them tight as they retrace their steps back to the flimsy safety of the shelter. Inside, they are ghosts of themselves, hollow and shaking. They huddle together, words unspoken, but the reality of their loss hangs thick in the air. Outside, the wind shrieks, carrying the echoes of their despair, and deeper within, the cold claws at their souls. Did he suffer? One of them utters, breaking the silence. How could we leave him? The question lingers, a weight they cannot shake. The bond they once held with their friend shattered like the ice beneath their feet. The emptiness presses them down, further into the abyss of their fears. As night drapes its shroud over them once more, hearts ache with haunting memories. A flicker of fire barely keeps the cold at bay, but it can't warm the chill creeping through their very beings. In tandem, they begin to recount Ray's laughter, his struggle, the fading warmth of his presence. He wouldn't want us to give up, Peter whispers, clutching the remnants of hope, close to his chest. There's a collective silence. Outside, the world seems to breathe, moving beneath their shack. The ominous cracks echo, reminding them that even the earth is suffering beneath their feet. They lie awake into the depths of night. The wind howls. It carries their lost companion's name. But the shadows loom large, and there's a sense of impending doom hovering just beyond their grasp. Tomorrow will bring choices, to fight on, or to succumb to hopelessness. In the darkness, a faint sound shatters the quiet, the breaking ice. It's a drumbeat of fate, and it thunders closer, threatening to claim them all. They share a glance, a dread-filled realization that not all will survive the night. Outside, the world cracks wide open as they hear a distant rumble, the ground shifting beneath them, an ominous reminder that they're no longer alone, fighting against the merciless grip of despair. Fear settles in, icy and familiar as their remaining time, becomes trapped within the relentless echoes of a chilling fate. What other horrors lie in wait for them, lurking just beyond the frost? Will they fight the ice that claims their memories, their lives? Despair settles like a stone in their hearts, and they brace for whatever darkness comes next. Chapter 10. The Fateful End. The ice stretches endlessly ahead, a vast, breathtaking white expanse, its surface shimmering in the faint Arctic light. But there's danger lurking just beneath, a treacherous skin hiding a restless underbelly. It is July 1881. The crew of the Jeanette finds themselves trapped in an unforgiving landscape, their ship long swallowed by the ice. Shadows of men, once filled with hope, are now ghostly figures driven by desperation. "Are we going to find land?" one of them, a young officer named John, asks, his voice trembling against the icy wind. He stares into the horizon, where the sun hangs low, a disk of pale brilliance, offering no promise of warmth. The older sailor, Bennett, grimaces, the creases of worry etched deeper into his weather-beaten skin. "Land?" he scoffs bitterly. "We might be nothing but ghosts by the time we see land again." Cold seeps into their bones. Each creak of their joints sounds like frozen metal. They huddle together for warmth, breaths visible in ghostly puffs. The air smells of salt, and something else, something elusive seeping into their consciousness, a sense of foreboding that lingers, gnawing at their sanity. Time is a foggy concept here. Days bleed together, the sun seems to mock them. Sledge teams venture out daily, but fortune is a fickle mistress. Hope flickers as often as it dies. Every mile is a battle, exhaustion coated in ice and sweat. Their provisions dwindle and mutterings of rationing grow louder. "We can't keep eating the same thing," whispers McBride, one of the younger crew members. He picks at the remaining biscuit, its stale texture rough against his tongue. "We'll have nothing left soon." Another crew member, old Tom, slaps him on the back. "Suck it up, lad. Get used to it. We'll feast soon. You'll see." His smile wavers, as if he knows the lie hangs in the bitter air. As they trudge across the frozen wasteland, the ominous quiet is occasionally broken by distant cracks, dangerous whispers of the shifting ice. It's as though the very ground beneath them is alive, breathing, and sometimes they hear something else, a distant hum, an echo of desperation. Each night they gather around the remnants of a fire, staring into the flickering flames. "What do you think happened to the others?" John asks, his voice barely above a whisper. "They're gone," Bennett replies harshly, his eyes narrowing against the cold. "This place devours people. Don't let their ghosts haunt you." But even he knows, deep in his heart, it's not just the cold they fear. It's the consuming silence. Days slip by. A hard frost sweeps through their makeshift camp, turning the air sharp. Frostbite creeps up fingers and toes, turning flesh dark and numb. A significant tension builds as hopelessness starts to accumulate like the snow around them. Then, a decision. It hangs in the air like an uninvited ghost. They must split up. There is discussion, but ultimately no dissent. Each man understands the unspoken rules of survival. "We can cover more ground this way," Bennett asserts, attempting to sound persuasive. "If we don't make a move, we'll die right here." They gather their supplies, grim faces set like stone. Healthy bravado fades in the face of gut-churning dread. The world outside is beautiful, yet utterly unforgiving. "Stay together, or we'll be lost," John cautions, but the fracture primed by desperation begins to split them apart. Before dawn, they embark on their separate journeys, a ragged line of figures etched against the white expanse. As their silhouettes diminish, the stillness deepens. A thick fog rolls in, swallowing the men one by one. Hours pass. The biting wind shrieks like a wounded animal. John shouts into the mist, "Bennett, McBride." His voice echoes hollow, lost to the vastness. He feels an emptiness claw at his chest, an acute loneliness that seeps into the marrow of his bones. Suddenly, the earth groans. The ice shifts violently beneath him. He stumbles, breath catching in his throat as a crack slashes through the surface. Fear ignites. Adrenaline floods his senses. "Run!" he screams. But the sound blends into the howl of the wind. Chaos descends. Ahead, a figure stumbles, trapped between the clutches of the ice. It's Tom, his face twisted in horror, one leg swallowed by a crevice, his screams muted by the howling storm. "John, help me!" His eyes reflect sheer terror. In that moment, John feels the weight of every second. He lunges forward, heart racing, skin prickling with urgency. Ice splinters beneath his boots, but he reaches for Tom, grasping his arm with desperation. Hold on. I won't let you go. But the ice fractures further, a dangerous whisper of doom. As Tom grips his hand, John feels a shudder pass through him, an unearthly chill that seeps even into his very soul. With a sickening crack, the ground gives way beneath them. The air rushes in, a frozen slap against their faces. Time slows. John can hardly process the horror, yet he knows the truth. They're being swallowed whole. The screams paling around them echo in his head, frantic voices merging into an orchestra of despair. No, no, he yells into the void, desperation clawing at his throat. And then silence falls in a brutal finality. Days drift into darkness. The few who remain huddle beneath the remains of a makeshift shelter, surviving on whatever meager scraps they can find. Shadows flicker and dance in the thin light, every corner whispering of lost souls. McBride, once sprightly and full of hope, has grown gaunt. His eyes reflect a haunting realization. John would have made it back, he murmurs, holding on to a memory. If we hadn't fallen apart. There's no comfort in his words, only a reminder of how quickly fate can turn. The ice remains a cruel keeper of secrets, and their hope dwindles. The scent of death, sharp and bitter, clings close, a reminder of each life consumed. In this final refuge, a chilling truth begins to settle in. They are surrounded by ghosts, phantoms of choices past, of men who stepped into the abyss of ambition. They sit in the cold darkness, hearts heavy with their loss, embodying a husk of survival. As the long Arctic night descends, a howl of wind sweeps through the shelter. A single voice, barely a breath, cuts through the silence. Is anyone out there? It is eerily familiar, a siren call beckoning from the icy abyss. In that moment, the crew is frozen, a collective breath held tight against the darkness. One unrelenting question hangs taut in the air. Is hope alive, or has it drowned in the depths of despair? A legacy fractured in ice. As the final echoes of the Jeanette Expedition fade into the vast silence of the Arctic, we are left with a chilling reminder of the fragility of human ambition. This ill-fated journey, cloaked in layers of ice and despair, reveals not just the daring spirit of exploration, but the harrowing consequences of pride. Each frozen body, each abandoned vessel trapped beneath the snow, whispers a tale of dreams dashed against the unforgiving landscape. The Jeanette, once a symbol of hope, now serves as a monument to the relentless brutality of nature. It reminds us that the earth, for all its beauty, harbours depths of malevolence toward those who seek to conquer it. In the records left behind, we hear the voices of brave men, fueled by ambition, yet undone by circumstance. They laughed in the face of danger, but as the biting winds howled their names, into obscurity, those once jubilant echoes turned to mournful cries. "We'll find a way," they said, clinging to dreams thicker than ice. But the ice had different plans. The stark reality of their plight lingers. The freezing temperatures devoured their resolve. The endless dark gnawed at their sanity. They vanished into history, leaving behind only questions. What would they have accomplished had fate been kinder? What glory lay just beyond the horizon, obscured by frost and fear? Yet, in this haunting narrative, there emerges a lesson clawing at the edges of our consciousness. The legacy of the Jeanette Expedition is not merely one of ambition, but also of humility. The Earth is an enigmatic force, and the very essence of exploring pushes us to reckon with our limitations. Their story beckons us from the icy chasms of the past to consider our present ambitions. Are we too walking on thin ice, believing we can master what was never meant to be tamed? Each expedition carries the spectre of this legacy, a ghostly reminder of what can happen when overconfidence blinds the spirit of inquiry. As we close the chapter on this tragic voyage, the shadows of those lost linger on the periphery of our understanding. What was meant to illuminate the mystery of the North became a graveyard of dreams, shrouded in the silence of eternity. Each heartbeat that ceased beneath the ice serves as a living testament to the perils of hubris. So, as we confront this chilling legacy, we must honour that which was lost. We must reflect upon our ambitions, our explorations. The Jeanette Expedition teaches us that the most profound discoveries often lie on the other side of fragility. If this history has left its mark on you, leave a like. It tells me you survived the journey. Drop a comment below. I want to know what part of this story haunted you most. Share your thoughts on how the shadows of hubris creep into your own life, and stay with us. Our next tale is one of ambition spiraling into chaos, where the light of discovery flickers dim against the encroaching dark. What happens when the quest for glory turns against its seekers? Join us as we unravel yet another chilling chapter from the annals of dark history.